Welcome to Looking Out Our Kitchen Window. And ladies, we went back to the window. And this time I brought a bigger cup of tea because I needed it. And if you need to go get you a cup of tea or coffee or a cool drink of water, do it before we dive in. Because today we will have the conversation part two of dating after 50. And it's called Beneath the Conversation, Sex, Fear, Freedom. And also, I've been doing that on my own for 30 years. So why do I need someone now? Because part one was about the women. They wanted respect, friendship, intentional dating, compatibility, faith boundaries, and someone who brings more to the table than a handsome face. Okay. But after reading more of the comments, I realized we need to go beneath the conversation because something else is happening here. Yes, women are hopeful and they're tired. Women are praying. And some women just jumped out there and jumped in the dating pool. Some have their foot in the shallow end because they're not ready to jump in yet. They're just looking, making sure there's no sharks down there. So, what we have said in part one, it can be difficult because we're trying to bring two individual lives together. And we're just talking about dating. Two individuals who have lived life, probably been married before, had other relationships, and that is not easy. And so, ladies, get ready. We started right now with Renee. Renee said dating after 50 can be hard, but it's doable. Her challenge is finding someone that is compatible, who have morals and values like her. It sounds reasonable. And she met a younger man. He was 2 years younger, not too much. Their conversation went well. He seemed like a gentleman. And eventually they decided to meet up for a date. And then the representative showed up. She arrived at the date destination and discovered he had already beaten her there. He was sitting there and waiting on the table with a six-pack of beer. Now, you might be thinking, okay, one beer doesn't make someone a bad person. I agree. Except Renee said he drank the one beer, went to the bathroom, came back, drank another beer, gave him that look, ladies. That look like what's going on for real. And she said, "Sir, would you care to explain what is happening here?" And his explanation was, "I'm a happy drunk." Okay, okay, okay. Well, he cleared that up, and Renee haven't seen him since. She didn't even accept his calls when he called her that evening and later that week. Now, at this age, we have to learn the difference between being too picky and paying attention. You know, experts are saying make a similar point. Don't talk yourself out of something that's consistent, that's right in your face, because you're paying attention. And Renee didn't need six more dates with this man to determine that he wasn't the one. She observed, and her observation may be one of the most underrated things when it comes to dating. Be aware. Watch his mannerism, watch the way he acts, observe. Now, Terry, she said, She met her late husband through a close friend in 2009. He was her friend's cousin. She was 49, he was 52. They dated for 6 months, became engaged in 2010, and married in 2011. They had some common connections and similar church backgrounds, and they shared 9 years of beautiful marriage before he passed away in 2020. And she has been praying again for her husband. And her prayers wasn't answered 5 years, 10 years, but years later. And that came 15 years later. And she did meet someone. But she said, I'm taking it easy and I'm observing and I'm watching. And she said, I'm afraid of the apps. This app, people saying, go on an app and you can meet someone. Fine. Because I heard some success stories, and we'll talk about those in this part of the series. But Terry said, dating apps can feel strange when the last time you dated someone, you were introduced at church, at a wedding, at a friend's gathering. Now people are telling you go straight on the app and swipe left or right, upload 6 pictures, write your profile, don't get catfish, don't get love bomb, and don't get ghosts. Oh my goodness. Lady, we used to just worry about him calling us back. And now we have to take all of that into account. And sometimes that can be a bit much. Yes, things have changed, but not so much that you want a real conversation to get to know someone. And did you know that they're saying apps can be for a tool? It's up to you. And then we have Lillian Barr. She gave us one short sentence. It is definitely different from me, but I'm hopeful, she said. She said, I'm not going to pass it up. I'm not going to throw it out my mind. I'm hopeful. Not desperate, not pretending it isn't difficult, not saying every man she meets will be the one. She said, I'm just hopeful. And that's a good way to start, being hopeful, believing that it could happen. You're not desperate, but you believe it. And Mary Thomas said, I stopped dating when I turned 60 because it was so different. She's 71 now and has learned to be content with herself. Dating and having a man is simply no longer a priority for me, she said, because sometimes society treats an older woman like she's sitting in God's waiting room, waiting for a husband to call her number. But she said, I'm not interested. She said, I am content living my life. Now, lady, let's talk about the elephant in the room because it came out in so many ways during posts and comments and conversation. And it's sex. Cynthia said, most men are looking for sex, which I'm not into before marriage. And she said, I have to reconsider when I approach a man how I will explain that to him that yes, I would love to date you, but sex is not the first thing on my mind. And do you know, several women describe feelings that people want to speed date their way into physical intimacy, okay? They want to say, hello, hello, how you doing? And then they say, dinner, sure. Sex, yes, no. And that's a problem. What happened to get to know me? What happened to finding out what I like before you go, as the lady said in part one, looking at my assets? Because there's more to me than that. So we have to look at that when we're thinking about dating. Just because you may have your AARP card doesn't mean that you don't want to feel attractive, you don't want to have romance, desire, intimacy, or even sex. But mature intimacy requires something beyond that. It's an agreement. It's an agreement that we understand and respect each other's boundaries. And they have a thing out there, even experts who work with older daters recommend being direct about sexual expectations and boundaries instead of assuming the other person shares yours. They also emphasizes that intimacy can include affection, emotional closeness, and physical connection. It doesn't have to mean we're jumping in the bed. And there's nothing wrong with wanting sex, but understanding that intimacy is more than sex. And do you know, I allowed a man to enter into the kitchen window, Mr. Stanley Baker. He offered a man's perspective on attractiveness and women ideal on this subject. He said men can become overwhelmed by women's sexual appeal today, including how some women dress. He said some men don't even know how to control themselves sexually and can wrongly assume that a woman's appearances means she wants to go to bed with them. Then he said, I also hope that we as people can awaken one day and unite in a harmonious, respectful relationship and not allowing our sexual desires to override respect and common sense. Now, Stanley, we appreciate what you're saying because we need a man's voice in the conversation. But I want to separate two things here. A woman can be attractive and dress well. A woman can dress sexy because that's how she feels. And she enjoy a man to notice her. But none of these things is telling her specifically to him that I want you sexually. Attraction may start with a conversation. It does not give anyone permission to write the ending for you. And perhaps this is one place where men and women over 50 need to become better communicators. And as instead of sexualizing every interaction, listen. Instead of deciding what somebody else wants based on their clothing, get to know that person wearing the clothing. And it applies to you women too. Don't assume because he brought you dinner, he's expecting sex. Don't assume because he hasn't tried to kiss you, he's not interested. And don't assume because he's quiet, he's emotionally unavailable. Don't assume, communicate. And at this age, haven't we earned the right to stop playing the guessing game? Now, VJ chimed in. VJ James. She came through the kitchen window and dropped a phrase on the table that made me put my tea down. She said, I've been dating for a while, well past my 40s and in my 50s. And she felt that men her age was trying to hold on to their youth by dating women who's younger. And then she said something that made me put my tea down. She said some of these men now in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s are dealing with multiple health challenges or exhaustion and looking for a hospice wife. Wow. Okay, girl. I don't think I heard that one. I heard a nurse with a purse, but I haven't heard a hospice wife. You know, and she said, no, I'm not interested in being anyone's caretaker at this age. because caretaking becomes a very real issue as we age, and that's true. Women need to allow themselves to ask, what kind of relationship uh, am I actually seeking? Do I want companionship or someone to manage my life? Do I want to cook or clean every day? Do I want to schedule appointments, organize medication? These are things we really have to ask as we're dating older. Because as V said, we don't want to be a hospice wife, okay? Meanwhile, Donna is in the shallow end of the dating pool. Donna said, I have my feet in the shallow end of the dating pool at 60, and after being in a 7-year relationship, and apparently the water is questionable. She said, dating can be a circus. Some men her age seem cranky, possessive, or content to sit on the couch. Meanwhile, some of the exciting men in their 40s and 50s seem thirsty or serial daters. So Donna is standing there thinking, do I jump in and swim, get off the shallow end? Or do I just get out, dry my feet off, put my sunglasses on, and walk the other way? Okay, here's something else. One of the things that we're talking about is being adaptable to different circumstances and flexible. Because you spend a decade becoming who you are, the person most likely you will meet has spent also decades becoming who they are. They have a routine just like you. They have money habits just like you. They may have children and grandchildren just like you. So understanding this is saying, can I adapt to something new in this time of my life? But learning the difference between independence and inflexibility is important. Let me tell you this story. Her name was Carol. She had been single for 18 years, and now she's 65. And she finally met David. He's 68. Good man, retired, church going, loved the Lord, and lived boldly about it. Financially responsible, physically in shape, and they went on a couple of dates. And after that, she invited him to her home for dinner. She thought it was fine. So she cooked. And soon as he, came in, she was cooking in the kitchen, and she set up a beautiful table for romantic dinner in her kitchen, which looked out to her patio where she had lights, and you can see also the stars. She thought it was beautiful. But soon as he came in, he said, oh, your kitchen, oh, it's nice, but I only eat in the dining room. I only cook in my kitchen, and I only eat in the dining room. And she looked at him and she said, oh, okay. She thought, this relationship may not work. Not because he's abusive or even demanding, but is he so inflexible to open himself to other things like I'm comfortable with eating in my kitchen, it's clean and it has a beautiful view. But the first thing he says is, I only eat in the dining room. You know, maybe he spent a lifetime arranging his life and he was comfortable with only eating in the dining room. She wondered, would this be an issue? Would that be an issue for you, lady? For him to just speak out and say, I only eat in a certain place? Would that make you reconsider? Women, it's things that we really have to look at our flexibility and adaptability. So let's look at Lois said about dating after 50. The person has to heal. Renee said, pay attention to what you see and be observant. Terry reminded us, don't give up simply because love came later. Lori said, It's all right to get out and kind of adjust to the new and just be yourself. Cynthia reminds us to keep your sexual boundaries. V asked us to examine whether someone wants a partnership or caretaking. And Gwen said she wants a man who will call her, set up date, make plans, and we can discuss together where we can go. And I think those suggestions are so good, the things we have been hearing. But as we look out the kitchen window, let's look at a couple of things. One of the things, we have to get out. Yes, we can stay in a house and we say, maybe God will send this man to me. I don't have to get out. But what's wrong with getting out, accepting invitations, doing something new? You might find out that you'll like that. Wouldn't it be good to go out, enjoying the things, doing something different, maybe a new hobby, and you happen to see a man that you see doing the same thing that you're doing, that you have something in common already? Get out there. Don't be afraid to try new things. Another thing is stop wanting someone to read your mind. Communicate. You have the beauty and the opportunity to speak what you feel, no obligation. You have the freedom to do it. Communicate exactly. And when you're communicating, you can even walk up to a man, because we talked about it in part one. Someone you see, asking them out. Would you like to continue this conversation if you happen to meet them somewhere and you're at a museum or church setting? Say, "Hey, can we continue this conversation over coffee?" That doesn't mean you're desperate. It just means you open up a door of opportunity for both of us. And what about dating for information, not for attachment at first? Not saying this could be my husband. Oh, no, not first. Slow down. Dating for information, to see what kind of person he is, to learn of their interests, their hobby, and also their history. What type of life have this person lived? Do they have plans for the future, or have they just settled into doing their same routine? Communicate and look and observe. And don't do the speed dating, because when you do speed dating, you'll get just that, something quick and fast, and you realize this is not what I was interested in or even going for. Take your time, because you deserve to take your time. And also decide what standards are you going to keep in this relationship. This one, such as saying, I must be respected at all times. That is a standard. Or what about he must share my core faith? That could be a standard. And what about he must be financially responsible? Is that a standard? What about he must want to eat, as she said, in the kitchen, on the back porch, but he's used to eating in the dining room? Is that a standard, or is that a habit that you can overlook or even discuss? So maybe the real challenge of dating after 50 isn't that there's no good men left, okay? And maybe it isn't women are asking too much. Maybe the deeper questions are, can two people who have spent decades becoming who they are, living a full life, meet and begin connecting without losing their self? Can we have sexual attraction and sexual boundaries and respect? Can we maintain standards without turning the preferences into an impossible checklist? Can we do that? Can we recognize red flags without assuming every imperfection is a red flag? Can we heal enough that the next person doesn't have to defend themselves against the last person? Those are real questions, ladies, that we're hearing from you. Real opinions, real concerns. This is real conversation. Okay? Can you have a conversation and really say, this is who I am and this is what I want? Who are you and what are you looking for? And be patient enough to listen and hear, not with rose colored glasses, not living from the past experiences, but living in the with the woman who knows what she wants. You know, I started the series asking, what are your thoughts about dating after 50? But after listening to these women and one bold gentleman, I don't think that's really the question anymore. I think beneath the question, we say, are we looking for the kind of love we had before, or are we ready to learn a new way of love and a new way of connecting? Because if dating after 50 isn't about returning to the old days, oh no. What if the 25-year-old or 35 or 45-year-old version of yourself is not the woman that you're trying to satisfy? It's the 50, the 60, the 70-year-old woman who have lived life, who have even softened around the edges because you learned a lot, you lost a lot, you survived a lot. And now you're open and willing to creating something new, something that you enjoy, that you embrace, that you have been visualizing, and even up for the challenge of it. And now, this is the end of looking out our kitchen window, part two. But we have part three, it's the final part. We're going to take everything that you ladies have shared and even some more comments because the comments are still coming in. Yes, your disappointments, your faith, your independence, your healings, your standards, dating younger men, dating older men. We're going to talk about dating apps and friendship. So, what is the newfound truth about dating after 50? And I have a feeling some of us may discover that dating after 50 isn't the only thing that has changed. We have changed too. Okay? So, ladies, that was part two. And I'll see you next time. This is V as we look out the window and look within. And this series has been so exciting, informative, educational, funny, amusing, kind of rubbed me in different ways and really enlightening. But this is us still listening to our hearts. We're still making room for different things. And also, we're still standing at the we have been and how we have changed. I'll see you next time as we're looking out the kitchen window. Part three, the final selection, dating after 50.